what we're trying to do is we're trying to see where the kids are at, why they think like that, and then show maybe there's a better way of thinking.
Right.
That's what a culture shift is. It's not a force. It's when you believe that there's a better way because you see someone else living that right way.
Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the pro life movement has changed, and so has the way we fight for the unborn. Many celebrated and stepped back, thinking the war was over, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Abortion didn't end, it just slipped out of sight. And when no one is watching, injustice thrives. We're here to show you why the battle still rages on and how to stand, speak, and fight back in a post Roe world. This is the CPC Podcast. What's up, and welcome back to the CPC Metro Podcast. My name's Chrissy. The Center for Pregnancy Choices is the largest pregnancy resource center in the state of Mississippi, and we exist to empower the choice for life. Erin Kate is not in the studio today, so we'll miss her. And that means that I have the responsibility of introducing our guest. But this particular guest is somebody that has my deep respect. He is my coworker and the first male that the CPC has ever hired. And so we are thankful that he is on our team. And so, Isaiah Harrison, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
So I work in culture shift. And so, as the name kind of suggests, we go out into the Jackson metro area where we not only attempt to shift the culture, but we try to build up the next generation. For example, we talk about dreams, we talk about goals, we talk about, how to speak properly, how to work through bridge building and wall building, how to
Mhm.
make sure that we're communicating effectively, and more importantly, how to respect yourself and your body, your dignity, loving people who may have never felt love before. And I think we really see a difference in the kids because we empower them to live as their best self.
Right. And I think that is one of the most surprising things that people find when they find out about the prevention department, because they don't expect working with students and youth ministry when we hear the term pro life. And so this is one of those womb to tomb situations that you go in there and you do love on students and minister to students and teach them about goal setting and self worth. And it's just as much pro-life as
Yeah.
the ladies that work in the clinic, you know? So, have you always been passionately pro-life, or how did this all come about?
Well, you know, truthfully, to be honest with you, I haven't really thought about it when I was, younger.
Mhm.
Um, the first time I ever, even thought about abortion was actually I was with my mom and we were doing like this walk in Jackson and or it was like a parade and I saw a film. It was like someone holding up a stake and it was a dead fetus on there. It was
Mm,
bloody, it was messy, and I was like, "Ugh,
mm,
I'm not getting near that,"
mhm.
Um, but then at one point I had someone ask me, you know, would I like to come to the CPC? And then in doing that and in learning, because I'm a follower of Christ, I always knew abortion was wrong because I always knew God had a plan for kids and not only for kids, but adults. And no matter how old you are, God has always had a plan for you. But it wasn't until I really thought about how many people throw away the lives of others and even maybe their own life that I knew that it's important to make a stand and really speak up for it.
So that's interesting because you are a college
Mhm,
student, and so you are living in a time where the world is screaming the opposite of what you just said.
mhm.
And so how do you stand boldly in your convictions with all of that noise that is telling you that you are an extremist, or you're not progressive or even unfeeling or unloving, you know?
Well, I really think it comes down to two things for me personally. Number one is being on the right foundation. So I think even when I fall, I don't fall far. Why? Because I fully believe that what I'm doing is a just cause. And I'm also not really that extreme. I don't think it's extreme to say, hey, make sure you're responsible for your actions. Or, hey, let's steward what God gives you. But secondly, I don't fall into the idea that someone else or a majority makes something right. If everyone in the world says 2 plus 2 is 5, I'm going to look at them and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not just going to fall in with what everyone else is doing because they might be wrong. The word says that narrow is the road that leads to heaven. And so I think most often the narrower side, the side that isn't getting enough attention, like our side, is important to think about. And when I go to like college, I've had people tell me, "Oh, you're a man. You don't get the right
Right.
for an opinion." Or I've said, all you do is call people murderers, and all you do is this, and all you do is that. I've realized that many people have a misconception of what real pro life looks like, the
100%.
same way that people have a misconception about what a real Christian looks like, someone
Mm.
who's actively trying to love people, not trying to judge people, trying to see the best in everyone, regardless of who they are. And I think that's where, when we stand in that, it makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely. And it really is just kind of a war on the truth,
Mhm.
because people fire accusations at Christians all the time. And it's like I was saying a few shows ago when we had Dr. Greg here, like there are people who will say, oh, well, you just care about the baby being born. You don't care anything about what happens after the baby's born. And then, okay, but if you can say that, but look at the evidence.
Yeah.
The church is the one who is adopting more children, and the church is the one who are going out and having missional projects that take care of people. My church has a program that gives food, to the hungry, and the life groups kind of rotate out serving every month
Yeah.
for that, things like that. So, um, talk about culture shift and what is a just a regular class look like when you guys go on site to teach the culture shift course. Let us step in that.
So a little bit before goes the prep. So we usually prep a week or two before the actual week to make sure that not only do we know what we're going to say, do we know who we're going to shift to who says what,
Mhm.
and what examples we're going to bring. But oftentimes we bring snacks, we bring all the packets, we bring all the, activities. And so what we do is we like to go out, and if it's our first session, we introduce ourselves with icebreakers, we play games. If it's a second session or later, we reintroduce the first session. And then what we do is we pass the papers out. We usually always start with a game, and
Mhm.
then the game ties in spiritually to whatever the lesson is. And then we just kind of go through step by step, working with the kids. Now, for the most part, we split up genders,
Mhm.
males and females, because they learn differently.
Mhm.
Their experiences are sometimes polar opposite, and they're more likely to reach back and respond to us differently and in different groups.
Mhm.
And so we just kind of talk about it. We want the kids to answer on their own feelings because we don't want to judge them right or wrong. We want to say, well, what are the pros? What are the cons of that thought process?
Mm.
I had a kid say the other day, you want us to find an answer. And I was like, okay, well, let's break it down why you feel that way. Because we're not actually trying to look for a specific answer. What we're trying to do is we're trying to see where the kids are at, why they think like that, and then show maybe there's a better way of thinking.
Right.
That's what a culture shift is. It's not a force. It's when you believe that there's a better way because you see someone else living that right way.
Right. But students are kind of hard to get right sometimes. You never know, like, if you're going to be met with, reserve,
Yeah.
that like a lot of them are not quick to trust. Some of them are a little too quick to trust.
Yeah.
So, talk about some of the challenges, just, as a college student leader that you guys have had to face when you go into these programs.
Well, in our most recent, what we see is clicks. Okay. So
Hmm.
that's with every school, that's with
Right.
everywhere. But what we do tend to see is people not necessarily paying as much attention because of that, or because they're not getting what they want, or because they're not learning what they want. Because we have certain lessons that kids are like roaring to learn about. And it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, you want to learn this? And then there are other sessions like, bro, we already know this. And so when it comes to that, what it takes is, hey, this is why. I think oftentimes kids want to know that you care, and then once they know you care, they begin to care about what you care about. So for us, it's really been relational. We open ourselves up as teachers, and I have amazing other teachers there. They are phenomenal because what they do is not only do they use a part of their life, but they relate it to the kids so perfectly sometimes. And even when we don't, sometimes the kids are like, okay, they ask questions. We allow the kids to ask questions. And for those reserve kids, you know, for example, last week we had a teacher sit with all the reserves, you know, they're really smart kids.
Right.
And so knowing that someone else is going to sit with them personally, I think really has a major effect on them because then it allows them to want to share and open up and be good with discussion. And we just have a fun time. I try to hang out, when I can, as in there are some schools I played basketball with the kids right
Mhm.
afterwards. At the one that we're at now, I go to watch the basketball games to go show that I support them because
Mm.
I do care about them. I really do. And I think because I care, they know that I care. So then they care about what I care about, which is them,
No,
you
and
know?
I think that makes all the difference, you know? I remember hearing a story about a missionary. So he
Mhm.
was in a foreign country. He was on the mission field, and he spent so long there, and he didn't feel like it was really clicking with these people. He was just the American guy who had moved into the neighborhood, and so as he tried, he wasn't really making the relationships that he had hoped for until one day his father died, and he didn't have the money to fly home and attend his dad's funeral. And so with the little relationships that he had made, he asked the people, "Can you help me out with this?" And after that, like when he got back, the relationships started to grow and he started to see fruit because everybody needs to be needed.
Yeah.
It's like they didn't feel like they were just another project. He came
Yeah.
to them with something that he needed help with, and it allowed them to serve. So I think that's a beautiful illustration of what you just said. Attend the basketball games, go to their school functions, know their names, know that they're not just a number in a seat. You know.
It was an amazing basketball game, by the way. I just want
Well,
to
that's
clear that up.
that's you. I mean, I don't know anything about sports,
I mean,
so
they
I
won
can't
by
say.
50. I mean, praise the Lord.
Yeah,
That's great. They were
that's
dunking all over the
awesome.
place. I
So
was
you
like,
got to see a lot of joy
yes.
come out of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So, but you're not always on the grounds. You're not always
Yeah.
at the schools. So sometimes you're in the office.
Mhm.
What are you doing in the office? Are you studying curriculum? Are you picking out things to teach? Like, how does the planning work with Culture Shift?
So within this section, when we go to different schools, we're allotted different times.
Hmm.
There are some places we get 2 hours, some places only 40 minutes, which may only be 30. And so, what my particular role has been lately has been to not only fix the curriculum, as in what is necessarily needed, what are these kids really taking from it, what is more important, but shortening it down to where it's bite sized, the kids can
Hmm.
get it really, kind of quickly and easily, but also what I'm putting an emphasis on. Okay.
Right.
So there are certain sections where there's a lot of broad topics,
Hmm.
and then let's shorten it down for an emphasis that hits these particular kids in the right way. Um, for example, we are talking about making sure you have good boundaries, okay?
Hmm.
But some of that is things that most people wouldn't think about. When we talk about people who are 16 with people who are in their 20s or 30s, that's a big line. That's kind of scary. And so we kind of want to make an emphasis that age is something that is really important when you're dating young
Right.
because you want to make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of. And so some of the kids really took that to heart. And it's like, wow, well, really, are we why would someone who's so old want to be with someone so young?
Hmm.
And then we get to talk about that in
Hmm.
the right way.
Yeah, and that's very practical. And I just want to reiterate the branch of CPC that you work in is prevention.
Mhm.
And so, for those who may not kind of get that, it is preventing the crisis from starting.
I really
So, it's
love the
being
names.
proactive,
Yeah.
right? So, what about training? I mean, you can't just obviously walk in and,
Yeah.
and teach. Did you have to go through extensive training to have this role? Or, I mean, because it's more than just being hired.
So I started out as a volunteer
Okay.
with my training. And so my training was 2 times a week. I would come in, I would read the entire lesson book, and then I would have to not only describe, but give examples of the teaching to my instructor, which was Miss Deshawn at the time.
Right.
And after that, I had to teach the lesson in front of other people in at the CPC, but they were acting as kids. So they were
Right.
acting disruptive or saying
Right.
crazy
So it's
questions
a
or
mock
yeah,
class,
a mock
basically.
class. Yeah.
And do you think that that has helped? I mean, when you step into the real classes, do you run into those situations?
Yes, but definitely not as severe because in
Right.
the mock class they asked some
Yeah.
questions and I was like,
Everybody has to ham it up a little bit, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you do, not, with prevention, not at CPC. You're a college student. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about that.
So I go to, MC Mississippi College
Hmm.
and I want to be a social worker. So actively, I go to college to learn like psychology. Right now, I got to do like biology, all my prereqs. And because it's a Christian college, we also have Christian studies. So
Hmm.
Old Testament, chapel, and then next semester, New Testament. So I'm a junior. So I should be graduating within the next 2 years. Outside of college, I teach middle schoolers about the word. So I teach at my church, the Point Church, um, 1120 Star Road, plug the
Hmm.
point. But we also go on prayer outings. I make their devotionals. I do things like that, which is really good. And I definitely see a lot of fruit. And it's also great practice to learn what's great to talk about and where I can get my biblical examples when I talk to just. And then outside of that, at MC, I kind of, work with Students for Life, sorta.
That's kind of where I was getting
Okay,
at. We
sorry.
love Students for Life.
And so the Students for Life group, I've helped them when they do like the Try to Change My Mind, where, I'm pretty good at speaking. So I go out there and I'm kind of the bigger male speaker that talks about, why abortion is wrong
Hmm.
or, you know, kind of talking about different problems. And I've definitely seen a lot of fruit just being there
Hmm.
and being able to talk to people one on one who disagree with me.
And so, do you think that that's been kind of a growth opportunity for you? I mean,
Hmm.
because you're in college. I mean, Christian college or not, you're going to
Hmm.
face opposition from your peers.
Yeah.
So, how have you navigated that?
Well, I kind of unsurprisingly, most of the people agree.
Hmm.
Um, but there are some of those, like, for example, I pray sometimes that the Lord sends somebody to allow me to sharpen my
Hmm.
skills and when I talk. And so he has. And on both occasions, we've had somebody come up, two different people,
Hmm.
had two very different arguments, which made me have to pull out my rationale and explain my reasoning. And I really think I changed one of their minds.
Hmm.
Now the other was just hard set.
Sure.
But it really gave me a taste about what it is in the real world. Because this person had a family member who had an abortion. He was like, they would have never been successful had they have had the baby. And then they were like, well, you're this, you're that, you're a bad person because of this. And then it branched out. And I realized, and it really made me sad thinking about it. Like, I was not violent towards him,
Hmm.
but he was aggressive at me
Hmm.
because he pre-assumed my position. And I think most people do that,
Yeah.
you know, which is why it was a great practice.
Well, especially in 2026, our theme has been that it's a gospel issue. Abortion is a gospel issue. And that's kind of one of the things that you were just talking about with the people in college, that come at you with opposition. They're wanting to talk about it's this, but not a gospel issue. It's a social issue, it's a cultural issue, it's everything before it's a gospel issue. And so if somebody comes at you and knows that you are a man of faith
Mhm.
and asks you to basically say defend your position on that. Why is abortion a gospel issue? What would you say?
I fully believe that God formed us in the womb. I fully believe that. I know that God knew us before we were in the womb. And with that, he also says, for I know the plans I have for you. And just those three verses alone lead me to believe that God has the entire plan. But here's another example. We read that there's a king of Assyria and God is using him, even though even though he doesn't know that he's being used for God's plan,
Right.
he's being used to shepherd God's people. And so, even if those who don't know, God is still having a plan for you, whether you're ready for it or not. You just have to get to it. And so I think once people fully realize that God is always there and God always has that better plan for you, that's when I think we realize that life is so important.
So let's talk about our events coming up. Now, you have an event, Culture Shift graduation coming
Mhm.
up. What's that going to be like?
So we're hoping, actually, I'm really excited. So we're gonna graduate with them. We're obviously gonna celebrate. We got a bunch of snacks. We're hoping to have like food come out.
Mhm.
Um,
And how
you know,
many kids?
about 75, to
That's
80.
that's a pretty big group.
And so, but some of them, hopefully they're all there. Some of them, it's a boarding school. And so
Okay,
because it's a boarding school, some of them may be home.
sure.
And so we hope all of them can attend. But um, for those who can, I hope to be playing basketball with all the basketball team.
Mhm.
For the girls, they're going to have like groups set up for things that they want to do. We hope to have different sports, maybe kickball out
Mhm.
there or whatever else, they want to do. And we're really just going to have a time to bond together
Mhm.
before we leave. And I think that's going to be kind of sad,
Yeah.
but I'm really excited because these kids, even though we've only been there for about, 8 weeks, it's been phenomenal to see a difference in those who wouldn't even speak the first day to those who are actively trying to listen and actively trying to learn. You missed a great testimony that Miss Betty shared yesterday. You should have been there, or Monday.
Give me a recap.
So essentially, we were talking about sexual education. And some of the things that the kids don't understand is that whether you're just doing oral sex, you're still creating a bond with
Mhm.
another person.
Mhm.
They don't think that's a problem. Some of them do.
Yeah, yeah,
But
right.
some of them don't think that's a problem because A, it's not sex to them, and
Mhm.
B, it's just sex for those who are on the other side. And so they talked about having sex with contraceptives and all of
Sure.
that. So when we talk and break it down, well, condoms don't always work.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, if you're just doing oral, you're going to want more things later. And if you use contraceptives and they don't work, what happens if you have a kid?
Mhm.
Okay. And the question was posed, what happens if your wife or woman or girlfriend or whoever you're sleeping with wants to have an abortion? And the man was like, no. But does he really always get that choice? And so what happens then when you're a male and, I only teach the men there. So what happens when you're posed with being a male, supposed to be the responsible one, supposed to be the protector of your woman, and you don't respect her enough to marry her, you don't love her enough to marry her, and then she ends up getting an abortion because she feels like you're not going to protect her or she's
Mhm.
not ready or it might stop her dreams. All of these things are examples that we hear every
That's
single
right.
day. And so he turned around and paid attention
Mm.
for the rest of the day. He didn't talk to his friends. Sat there and was like, "Whoa, wait a minute," and I was like, "Oh." It really, I think it shocked them. And we're not trying to scare them, but those are highly possible realities.
Right. And that's what I love about what you guys are doing because the topic of oral sex is very taboo.
Hmm.
We don't want to talk about it, especially in churches. But these are situations that they are finding themselves in every single day.
Hmm.
And if we are not teaching them and we are not training them about how to decide now what you are going to do, don't we hope you don't get into that situation at
Yeah.
all. But if you do, and that's the road, that like you said, it could lead to an abortion decision. And then you have a real decision to make as far as something that's going to affect you for the rest of your days, you know. And I think men need to hear that to lock in.
Yeah.
So I love what you guys are doing. So are you coming to Life Walk? We got to talk about Life Walk for a second.
So I will be there.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm walking or working, yeah, I'm
Right.
unsure.
Right.
But yes, I do plan to be there.
Is it gonna be your first life walk?
No,
Were you there last year?
yeah, I've been there for a couple of years now.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. How long have you been volunteering?
I haven't been volunteering for long,
Okay.
but so before I had dated somebody who went to the Life Walk,
Right.
and because I knew them, I went
Oh, okay.
regularly.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
And then, yeah, I went to church with Betty, and so she would always invite me as well, so I would always go as well.
We love Betty Hodge.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of give us the backstory there? Because I know that she was very influential in your life.
So I used to date her daughter, and before I did, I wasn't that great of a guy. I wasn't that great of a Christian yet because I was kind of lukewarm, and I think all of us struggle with that. And
Mhm.
so, what happened was, she once told me, Before you're ever gonna date my daughter, you are going to have to not be doing this." And she had no clue who I was, but everything she said were things that I did. And I was like, crap. I was like, if someone who's a parent, and I respect authority,
Mhm.
heavily, and I was like, if someone who's a parent really sat there and named things that they don't want for their daughter, but I did all those things, how bad am I? And I really thought that. I really contemplated with that. And so I changed my life around. And now I didn't end up, I'm not dating her now. I date someone else.
Mhm.
However, in the process of, you know, breaking up with her, I was working at a kids camp, and it's called Sun Seekers, and I
Mhm.
worked there. And there was a time where I, was with kids, and being with those kids, teaching those kids led me to feel as though that my job was to be with kids, and especially a specific incident. There were 2 black kids fighting for nothing, no reason. And I started crying because the day before that, I had got a letter from my father, who is deceased, in which he talked and he was telling me how I'm going to do amazing things for the black community. And, before this, all I've ever had was negative experience with black people, truth be told. And it really shocked me. But then to see these 2 kids cry and for me to start crying, and I don't usually cry in public like that. And I was like, why the heck am I crying? I was like, what are you boys doing? I was like, and they were crying. And I was like, and these are fifth graders. And I was like, why are we sitting here fighting? And that led me, once we broke up, I started fasting and I went to my church and I started praying, and God showed up right there in the midst. I remember it was like 103 degrees. I went to my church. For some reason, it was unlocked. I went into a closed room. It was completely dark. I started playing worship music, turned my phone down so there was no lights, and I just sat there looking up. And as I look up, there's a light that shines there. The room gets cold. There was no AC in there. The room gets cold, and it feels like the Holy Spirit just descended, and it
Mhm.
really felt like God was there. And God told me, to be okay with the unknown, which I'm a guy. I like to know
Right.
what's going to happen. I like to prepare. I like to prep. And so I leave there, go to work, all that. So a couple of weeks go by, and Miss Betty gives me a call, and she says, "Hey," she says, "I would love for you to come try out Culture Shift. You want me to explain it to you?" And I was like, "No, you don't have to do that." Because I fully believe that whatever she has for me is good because she knew me, and I think she is good. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, no one's good but God, but I believe that Miss Betty knows the Lord. And so, because she knew the Lord, if she was going to ask me for something, I knew it was going to be for God's plan and God's purpose. And so, I just signed up, and I've been there ever since. And it's been great. It's been an amazing journey, a big transformation within me, but also big learning development for me and with God, you
Right.
know.
Well, and I think that just brings everything full circle so perfectly because it goes back to what you teach in Culture Shift and how you mentor
Mhm,
those students. Who you look up to matters.
mhm.
It is a game changer. It's something that changes the trajectory of young people's lives. We all can think about who influenced us for the good or not when we were younger and
Yeah.
how that has impacted us in the long term today. So thank you for sharing that. As we wrap up, we wanted to make a couple of announcements. Besides Life Walk on April 25th, we also have a Life Walk kickoff that is happening on March 26th at 5:30. So we've already had one round of kickoff. It was a lunch, and this is more of an evening event where you, as a team captain, will come and pick up what you need and hear everything that you need to know on how to be a LifeWalk captain. So we're excited about that. But before that, we have another mission experience on March 19th. Now, the mission experience is fun because you get to tour the facility of the CPC and you get to hear about all of our ministry arms, including prevention. So we'll talk about prevention. Isaiah will speak. We will talk about intervention, which is the medical side of things, and then extension, which is our abortion recovery programs.
My
So
favorite.
it's wonderful. It's amazing. Like God is doing things in every piece of the ministry. And so we're excited and we want to share that with you. Now, the next morning on March 20th is our prayer breakfast. And we love the prayer breakfast because we get to see people before they go to work, before we all start our day. We can come together and really just take the opportunity to eat, fellowship, but most importantly, pray with each other about the abortion crisis and who God wants to send to the CPC, whether that is volunteers, employees, or young women and men who are in crisis currently. So it's really, really special. Before we close, Isaiah, thank you so much
Yeah.
for giving your time. I know that you are not on the clock right now. You just kind of came over from your dorm to hang out with us today. So I know that that is a big deal, you know. So we really appreciate you. So before we go, I would like to just share this, and this kind of does have something to do with your MC campus.
Mhm.
I was picking up both of my sons from karate a couple of nights ago, and I noticed a display on the quad with all these little yard flags. Can you tell me a little bit about that before?
Yeah, I can. So there's over 2,800, and those are actually the amount of babies aborted in America per day. Not per week, not per month, per day.
And there was a big sign that said that.
Yeah,
Now, these little flags are, not too much bigger than a postage
yeah,
stamp, but together they just covered this hill where they were placed. And so it was a very interesting sight. And so I was on the way home and I rode by MC and I showed my sons that, and they started asking questions about what that means. And so that opened up the door for a conversation about, well, what does that have to do with us?
yeah,
We're kids. And what I told them was this. I said, the Lord could have chosen for you to be a soldier in World War II or an explorer or even somebody in the Bible times, but he didn't. He chose you at this time in the world's history. And he chose you to live in this time right now for a purpose. And abortion is the biggest human rights, humanitarian crisis of our time, and you just happen to be living in it.
yeah,
And I think back to the book of Esther,
yeah.
where she said, we were born for a time such as this.
Mhm.
And so when you are face to face with God and he asks you, what did you do with the time that I gave you? What will you say? We all have to be accountable for that. And that
Mhm.
is why I respect Culture Shift so much, because it is not going to be said of our leaders that they stood back and let these kids be brainwashed by the world.
Yeah.
And I hope you carry that truth with you. We were born for a time such as this, and it is up to us how we are going to respond. So I hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you later.